All right, welcome to America This Week. I'm Matt Taibbi.
And I'm Walter Kern.
Walter, it is one messed up world.
Yes, it certainly is.
And not getting any better. And this last week has been as inflammatory as our media environment has been in my memory. Can you remember anything like this?
Well, my standards for inflammatory are pretty high because we live in an inflammatory world and have for years. I was thinking back over the history of this, little podcast last few years. And, I think at every 3 or 4 month stage, we've thought, well, it can't get any worse than this. But it does escalate, and it's escalated considerably. But I did a little reporting this morning. Got off my lazy ass, instead of just doing thought experiments. I actually called some people and talked to some people, and my general impression is this, and this is a weird thing to say: a lot of people are making money off this thing, this Charlie Kirk business. It is a gold rush for the social media age, and for the influence shops, and for the Macedonian contractors and so on, who push points of view and spray like a fire hose all kinds of stuff into particularly TikTok right now, more than X. TikTok has become the platform of choice for the Charlie Kirk post aftermath, and a lot of it's jumping over to Twitter because Twitter doesn't have really good defenses against TikTok content. So inflammatory TikTok content sort of builds up, jumps the fence, gets on to X, and is used, frankly, to program the LLMs, the AIs that are recording, memorializing, and shaping people's experience of this event online. So there's that happening. What's also happening is at the highest levels of the government, of the federal government, you have very, very grave concern over what is taking place and what's occurred. And I think, just letting myself finish here, what's very unique about this is that this guy who died, Charlie Kirk, was a good friend, a personal friend, and a longtime friend of a lot of the people right now who are at the top of the country. And that's a little different than the usual situation. Not that this is a usual situation or comparable, but we're talking about people who were talking on the phone to this guy, texting him, enjoying his company until almost the moment he was shot. So that changes the complexion of the response.
Yeah. So with regard to that, forgive me, folks. I'm not sure which SOT we should be looking for, but it's the one with JD Vance talking about. He's making a pretty serious declarative statement, and this has been a theme of a lot of the kind of conservative right wing. Not right wing. Is that the right term? A lot of the conservative media response has been along these lines, but this is the most dramatic thing that I think we've heard.
Shortly after Usha and I left Charlie's family and Charlie's remains in Arizona, I read a story in The Nation magazine about my dear friend, Charlie Kirk. Now, The Nation isn't a fringe blog. It's a well-funded, well-respected magazine whose publishing history goes back to the American Civil War. George Soros's Open Society Foundation funds this magazine, as does the Ford Foundation and many other wealthy titans of the American progressive movement. The writer accuses Charlie of saying, and I quote, "Black women do not have brain processing power to be taken seriously. But if you go and watch the clip, the very clip she links to, you realize he never said anything like that. He never uttered those words. He made an argument against affirmative action as a policy. He criticized a specific Supreme Court justice as an individual. He never said anything about black women as a group. He made an argument for judging people of all races and backgrounds by their own individual merits. The very evidence she provides, this hack of a writer, shows that she lied about a dead man, and yet she wrote it. An esteemed magazine published it. It made it through the editors, and of course, liberal billionaires rewarded that attack. Now, of course, even if Charlie had uttered those words, it wouldn't mean that he deserved his fate, but consider the level of propaganda at work. Charlie was gunned down in broad daylight, and well-funded institutions of the left lied about what he said so as to justify his murder. This is soulless and evil. But I was struck not just by the dishonesty of this smear, but by the glee over a young husband's and young father's death. Quote, she says, "He was an unrepentant racist, transphobe, homophobe, and misogynist." The Nation wrote, who often wrapped his bigotry in Bible verses because there was no other way to pretend that it was morally correct. He had children, as do many vile people. That's what they said. He had children, as do many vile people. Now, hours before this smear was published, my wife and I had the honor of escorting Charlie's body back to his home in Arizona. We took his wife, Erica, we love you, his parents,
Okay,
his
let's
sister,
pause there
and a few of his...
for a minute. There's a part later that becomes important where he talks about how basically the left is sicker than the right in this country. Okay, let's talk about the Nation piece and some other things. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the Smith-Mundt concept that's being, so there's a lot of confusion about that. Let's actually start with what Charlie Kirk actually said about Ketanji Brown Jackson, about I think it was Joanne Reed and maybe Sheila Lee. But let's listen to the actual quote from his show.
Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously.
Okay. So, Walter, I think you and I both know how something like black women don't have the processing power, how that ends up in a major publication. What happens is it slips through one somewhere, or somebody sees it, thinks it's in quotes, and it isn't, and that gets it through the fact checker. And then once it's in two places, it's everywhere, right?
The New York Times had to correct its own obituary.
Which, did they say that in the obituary?
No. They didn't use that. They didn't use that quote, but there was another view attributed to him.
Oh yes, the one I wrote about that. Yeah, the other one that I wrote about. Yeah. So that can happen. It does happen. But the problem is those kinds of mistakes are usually not punishable because they're not liable against individuals, usually, right? In Charlie Kirk's case, I think he could have. This is the kind of thing you can sue for libel for. Like if you say, I didn't actually say black women don't have the processing power, what I said was X, that's probably a winning court case. There are things that Charlie Kirk has said that make me uncomfortable, but you can't misquote a person and you especially have to be, you especially can't do it with something like that, right? So what's got everybody up in arms is this idea that there's this zone in the media of unpunishable untruth. And this is something we heard all the time over the last 8 years about Trump and about the right. And this is why we need to crack down on social media, because it's a cesspit and a cesspool. And it's why we need more stringent controls, because look what happens. And you can go from the mass shootings and Christchurch to J6 to I don't know. There are several other incidents. You say this leads directly to violence, then that becomes an argument for censorship. Now we're getting this all over the place. Clay Higgins immediately came out. Can we see that tweet? And is proposing a bill, that frankly should freak people out quite a bit, I think. Can we blow that up? I'm going to use congressional authority and every influence with big tech platforms to mandate immediate ban for life of every post or commenter that belittled the assassination of Charlie Kirk. If they ran their mouth with their smart-ass hatred celebrating the heinous murder of that beautiful young man who dedicated his whole life to delivering respectful conservative truth, those profiles must come down. Okay, so this is the, it's not going to pass. It's not going to happen. But what he's proposing is a turbocharged version of what we've been seeing on social media everywhere.
This is happening in the 2-3 days after an assassination. This is emotional, maybe a little bit of grandstanding. It's someone wanting to, wave the banner of their fallen friend. I don't take it quite as seriously, frankly, as the deliberate, systematic, university tested, GEC governmentally funded approach to things like COVID and so on. I think it will clear. I of course, vigilant about it in the future, but I repeat, the guy was just killed in a bloody and public fashion, who is a longtime friend of a lot of these people. And so I think you have to have a little bit of grace around it, because it is not a deliberate, premeditated, funded push to curate our speech. It is a reaction. So anyway, but I agree, vigilance in this area is always required. But what I do want to sort of unpack from my original remarks is that we are seeing, I believe, and my reporting substantiates, and my reporting includes people who are in the industry, okay, who and have been for a long time. We are seeing the automated and deliberate and high paid convergence of a lot of commercial interests, political interests, and technological possibilities in the exploitation of this death for the purposes of making money, serving clients who come wanting a certain point of view blasted into the public space, and with the purpose of reifying itself on the LLMs or AIs. A definite endeavor was made to overwhelm Grok, for example, with comments and points of view and confusing information. And it was successful to a large extent. Musk has already noted that he sees a lot of bullshit on Grok, and he's going to address it. But we're seeing a cyber war on top of a real incident, and the emotion around it is inflected by the personal relationships that a lot of our leadership had with this individual, and by a sense of fear. Because let's put one thing into the mix that I don't think we properly esteemed. There are a lot of people who are about to give speeches or are scheduled to go to colleges or various events, public events already on the books, who are scared for themselves.
Hell yeah. I've already read the riot act about talking about public appearances.
Yeah. And that's new. And that, Matt, is a dire threat. If we want to talk about, threats to speech and threats to expression, Clay Higgins thing is a little bit of a,
Yeah, I'm not worried about that one. The
Yeah.
Smith-Mundt thing I'm worried about, but we'll
Yeah,
come to that.
but on a practical level, a non-legislative level, on a human and social level, there are a lot of people a lot of guys whose wives and a lot of women whose husbands are telling them, "Hey, honey, can you tone it down? Can you not go to that? Can we cancel this? Can we not attend this function, even as audience members?" And that is a acute, direct, urgent, and unfortunately, really, really influential emotion at the moment that can't be discounted in its disruptive nature.
So there's something that I was seeing online right away in the first moments after it happened. There was a difference in the way people were responding to this incident. I don't remember ever seeing it before. On the left, I guess you would call it the left, it almost feels like a frustration. We're tired of saying our thoughts and prayers are with him. We're tired of
they would have never said that in the first place. What they're
right.
What they're tired of, Matt, is not getting to say they're delighted in death. What they're tired of is having to hold their fire. I know that a lot of the some of the most inflammatory videos and so that are going on are actually contrived to gain attention. Right? But at the same time, Aaron Carriari, a guy we both know, a mild-mannered physician who became a bit of a controversial figure during COVID, but for his medical opinions and his, professional opinions about how the whole thing was going down, brought my attention to the fact that, you've got people in hospitals who are supposed to be there at your bedside tomorrow if you get in a car accident, who are saying things that would give you pause, especially if that nurse perceived you not to be one of them politically or ideologically. That's freaking new. I mean, it's sort of reminiscent of COVID and the talk about the unvaccinated.
Yeah, the unvaccinated, but it's a step beyond even that. Okay, yeah. So there were a number of people who were fired already, and then there's been backlash about the firings. But what were the firings were over statements that just were mind-boggling to me. Like, I just couldn't believe it. I mean,
I know. I saw a couple of things where I was like, one involved a school resource officer down south and who'd made some comments and was being disciplined. And the headline suggested they were just insensitive or something. And then I looked at them and they were like just pure assassination porn and glee, directly referring to shooting, your aim, taking people out.
No, it's incredible. And then the Clemson thing, there's one retweet. There was a Clemson professor who got fired. He retweeted a tweet that said, it's like N-word was worried about DEI and DIED instead. Then, there was another one, no one mourns the wicked, Twitter after death. These like professors, like, come on, man. Another one is saying Charlie Kirk recently
Empathy is a made-up New Age term, that person said. Oh my Lord!
So that's a reference to another one where Charlie Kirk, it's an aside. Again, I wasn't a big Charlie Kirk fan, but he's talking. There was a thing that he was saying on his show where, as an aside, he just kind of said, "Yeah, I don't believe empathy is really a thing." Like it was in the middle of a comment about Bill Clinton, and it was very offhand.
Matt, we write for a living and we talk for a little
sort
bit
of a living,
supplementary few restaurant meals, and I got to tell you, in the totality of the things you say when you are filling time, and we don't fill time, but I mean, my Lord, you drift off. Some days you're tired, some days you're animated, sometimes the subjects are complicated and you don't quite have a grasp on them, and you take that entire blanket and you cut a little swatch out of it. It might have a blood stain on it, it might have a pee stain on it, it might not be your finest moment,
but it might not be, and it might also be something that there might also be another thought under there, like, yes, he might be thinking of some other quality that is that would have a deeper Christian meaning, whereas empathy is kind of what he was saying was a New Age vague concept. I don't know. It like
in general, Matt, I don't like trials that take place after the death penalty has already been administered.
Right.
Okay. I don't like trials of people's lives after they have already been executed. I won't want one for myself. I won't want one for my worst enemy, honestly. And I can say that truly. If we don't have some common humanity, and if we don't at least pretend to have some when we don't feel it in our hearts that day, then we got nothing to talk about. It'll just be, may the best man win in some Hobbesian competition of, and the 6'8" people will win out over the 5'8" people like me in that competition. And the people with good aim and the people with luck in their conspiratorial, violent, cell-based warfare will win over those who are just working for a living. So I don't think it's untoward to take people who are celebrating death. And, I worked in Hollywood. I've worked in a Hollywood writer's room. If I made comments that could even be faintly construed as, I don't know, anti some group or, misogynist or something, I would get a visit. If I had. They came and they told us the ground rules at the beginning of the room. The idea that you can just talk about death and bloody vengeance and la ha 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 and still expect protection from your employer, sorry.
So there's another clip that's going around. This is Destiny.
Who is Destiny?
I don't really understand who Destiny is, honestly.
Suddenly I'm down in the fucking swamps of Twitch and all these other platforms that, I have assiduously, to save time and brain cells, stayed away from. And it's pretty damn shocking when you focus on them.
It is. And I find now that if you get off social media for 3 or 4 days and go back on, your brain has to readjust to the hostility level, and it's not easy to do. Like, and if you're not on some of these other platforms where it's even more aggressive than the stuff that I usually consume, it's just, I don't really understand. I mean, I guess some of it's algorithmic, some of it is based on what people think is going to earn the most clicks.
The clicks are just surrogates for the bucks, baby. Okay, clicks are bucks, and you'd be shocked what some of these people make.
So let's listen to this Destiny comment, which is like it's just nuts.
Out the crime statistics. Not exactly like
you need conservatives to be afraid of getting killed when they go to events so that they look to their leadership to turn down the temperature. The issue is right now, they don't feel like there's any fear. Like, I don't know. It's like memes. It's just memes to everybody, I guess. I don't know, bro. I don't know. I don't care. I'm playing video games. Okay. I'm done today. I don't give a fuck. God,
dude, you are absolutely the most heinous example of what you condemn.
Please don't anybody make any actual fucking, the most cucked, weak ass, fucking bullshit ass speeches on my side. God, if it happens, holy shit, I'm going to make a death note before I go out to go live and not. God, it's so cucked. It's so optics cucked.
Oh, aren't you cute? Get rid of the cucked,
it's
man.
Optic.
That's so 2 years ago. Even I know that at 62 years old.
So yeah, it's a right wing term, or it was.
Exactly. Oh, they're all tough people, Matt. Everybody changes hats, right? Okay, 2 years ago they were telling us that about microaggressions, right?
Right.
2 years ago, words that you and I just use in casual conversation, or looks we might give, or maybe if we over smile. That was almost a civil rights offense. Now they're all tough guys talking about cucks and defending the right to fucking talk about bayoneting somebody through the freaking forehead. And hey, that's my right.
I mean, for me, this whole era started for me, and when there was an incident in the post George Floyd moment, when there was so much anger, all over the place, when the extremely mild-mannered and progressive reporter Li Fang published, he just ran a video of somebody, of a black man he interviewed, I believe in the Bay Area, who said something to the effect of, how come people only care about black deaths when it's a white cop who does it? And immediately was set upon by tens of thousands of people, including almost everybody in the major media world, just for putting out a video that people suggested was reminiscent of the conservative black on black crime theme, right? And he almost got fired. He had to go to the HR department. He had to have a talking to. There was a major brouhaha about it because he had interviewed the wrong person and had not significantly smothered it in counter messaging. Now we got people. Screw that. We got people out here saying, so and so deserves to die.
Need to be killed. That's exactly what he said. And that is, listen, God save you right now if you are attempting to be reasonable. God save you if you're attempting to be moderate, if you're trying to get to a higher level, if you're trying to understand, if you're trying to wait on your anger for more information, because it is the nature of these kinds of times. We talked about Dostoevsky writing about pre-revolutionary Russia last week, that those who are getting in the way of people and their zealotry, getting in the way of people and their supply of stimulant, cortisol, adrenaline, are going to get shredded. Get out of the way. Don't go to a bar with two guys who are spoiling the fight and get in between them and tell them to calm down. You'll get hit by both of them.
So we have multiple things going on here. Charlie Kirk gets assassinated. Immediately there's a strident, mocking, almost celebratory thing going on, and it's almost like people are worried about that accusation from Destiny, like, oh, these cucked takes, right? People they were staying away from those.
What, dude, like, what do you think the LGBTQ side of the world cares about being called a fucking cuck, dude? Do you think that anybody really cares at this point?
Well, they do, though. Well,
the only people who cared in the first part were these like pseudo Nietzschean types who, the BAPs and the Bronze Age perverts and that crew back when, who were all, flexing their gym pumped muscles at each other and calling other people cucks. To see that come up on the left. I mean, one nice thing about the left, as I used to understand it, is that they were cool with you not always being the big mustachioed mech, stalwart. Not always flexing. It was kind of relaxing for a guy who started out wanting to be a poet, to be among people who weren't always fucking flexing.
Right.
He was back in the high school locker room.
Right. You didn't have to always be showing off your guns. No, that was great, but suddenly everybody's got to be they have to be maximally aggro, right? Like that's the thing online, and I guess that's what look, we've known for a while that the strong emotional take is what gets you money in this new influencer media economy, and that's kind of a new thing. In the previous iteration of the news, which was, as a mutual friend of ours said, was there was no news business. It was just managing the decline. Like because the old advertising based model of news has been steadily dying.
Once Absolute Vodka finally threw in the towel,
right,
for support,
right.
For advertising on the back page and in the middle of every magazine, the whole thing just became, how could I put it? It was like closing time. Everybody was just trying to get their little piece.
Right, exactly. Like all the 4s went up to 8s. You know what I'm saying? Like it's that whole thing where, well, whatever I've got left, I'm going to empty this holster because there might be a few more pennies in it. Whatever's going on, and what we've seen is that it's had a cascading effect, which unfortunately I do think one can argue has led to this moment. There have been multiple things that have happened as a result of the changing economics in news, and this is something I wrote about in Hate Inc. in my book, which is that people will be incentivized instead of doing the nuanced down the middle version of the news that, or ostensibly down the middle, which is what used to characterize the business back when making money wasn't such a huge thing. And because remember the Communications Act of, 33, 34, it mandates that if you lease the public airways, you have to do some things in the public interest. So there was always this idea that news didn't have to always make money, up until a certain period in history when some shows started to make money. 60 Minutes made money, but then the big innovator was Fox. And what did people see with Fox? They saw the strong, opinionated take, that was targeting a specific audience. Everybody started to do that. Then we started to see, I think, a loss of interest in getting things right in straight news reporting, which leads to shit like people being misquoted all the time, or news stories being wrong and people being lied about. And you mix that with the increased aggression online in social media, and everybody's just pissed off at each other all the time. At first, it was just an attitude; it broke up families. But now it's reached the point where people are going to be shooting each other.
Yeah, I mean, okay, that's true. The terrain, the general health of the specimen has been compromised. Its immunity is low. Opportunistic infections increase in that setting. At the same time, I must point out that very high level large-scale, intense, and well-funded endeavors have been made to divide America, particularly during the COVID era. Okay? It's not just the fruit of a decline in media self-discipline.
You know what? This is a great point. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Because it's not just the individualized aggression. It's the Jimmy Kimmel, take a nap, Wheezy, or whatever his fucking thing was, right? I mean, that's planned. I think that's not an off the cuff thing. That's we want you to die, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And there was money. There was like propaganda money behind that,
There absolutely is. But again, I tell you, we had this thing called the pandemic, and I'm not gonna become one of these MK Ultra ravers, but the social psychology experiment that was run then, and I know it was an experiment because it was gamed out beforehand in certain tabletop exercises, and so that's not far-fetched for me to assert that. Cause people to go online, be isolated from one another, start hating each other over primal fears of contagion. We had articles all over the place which were encouraging the segregation of the population over various things, vaccination status being the main one. Let me. I don't know why I'm throwing this in. It's not really germane, but I'm privy to a speech that was given by a U.S. congressman to a think tank last weekend, and I can't vouch for the content of it. I'm only repeating what was said, which revealed that during COVID there was a continuity of government plan that almost came to fruition, in which an army general almost was made the manager of the United States because it was about to be held that it could not manage itself. Congress couldn't get a quorum. Various things were starting to malfunction at the level of federal administration. Now, whether this congressperson is telling the truth or exaggerating, I can't tell you. But they had no reason to in the setting that I'm describing. And there is a Newsweek article that kind of from back when that basically describes this in a way that I don't think many people noticed at the time. We have been through a massive reconditioning of the American character. You call it left or right, but it's a massive reorientation of what it means to be neighborly, what it means to communicate, what it means to, be a community. And that was not a good thing. And these events are exploiting, I think, I'm not saying intentionally, I'm not saying that this kid or whoever he might have been, involved with, or whoever might be revealed to have been part of this. I'm not saying that they were consciously exploiting that, but it wasn't just the fruit of the media becoming slack. There was a large-scale reorientation, Great Reset style plan to change the nature of our republic in its everyday dealings. And the fruit of it is some of this craziness, if not the crime itself.
And there's also going along with that are a series of basic tenets that are kind of new. Number one is we are paying attention all the time to what you're saying and what you aren't saying. If you have, similar to the silence equals violence message that came out during the summer of Floyd, right? Everybody had to stand up, make the public display of solidarity. You had to have
right. What a trick that was. Oh, I'll make the public display, and then later you have it. I'll put the target on my chest.
Right. Right.
Or I'll put the target on your chest by a negative process in which you don't have the badge. Okay.
Right.
We've all got the badge. Where's yours, man?
Where's your badge? That became a big cancel culture thing, and so people who weren't making enough professations, is that a word? Who weren't professing in
protestations. Yeah.
Protestations. I remember one particularly maladroit, bizarre effort to cancel Steven Pinker because of like 3 things that he kind of sort of said a long time ago, and mainly that was because he wasn't piling on enough at the right time, right? So, but that whole social surveillance thing became much more powerful during COVID. We're all paying attention to what your status is, what you're saying, and if you're not saying the right things, well, guess what? We're now overtly going to say that you're killing people. This is a pandemic that you are responsible for. You should be shunned by your family for not taking the right actions, and maybe we should even hate you. Like
we should hate you.
We should hate you. You're ignorant and you're spreading death.
Fuck your freedom, said Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right?
A movie star who depends on an aging and somewhat defunct movie star, no longer dependent on big box office. Because let's notice the fact that we don't have those big, except for professional sports and a movie every once in a while, we don't have those big mass public gatherings since COVID in quite the same way we did before, and but I want to make one more point, and this will be the controversial one, and this will get me the trolls on the comment section. But JD Vance just had a point, and he had a point in other parts of that presentation, which is this: the level of harassment, ugliness, and threat that has come about as a result, I think, of the Democratic Party losing its grip on power is unique. I have been subject in the last year and in the last few months to a unprecedented level of threat. And I won't go into it. Criminal intrusion on my life. It is not coming out of the atmosphere, out of some sort of cloud seeding, just kind of systematic coarsening of things. It's people and groups and shops and troll farms and so on. Being very specific, because they don't like guys like me, first of all, who are perceived as, heterodox, but also, I think, strangely, who are trying to remain reasonable in a time when everybody wants everybody to line up on the damn, battlements.
That's the thing that people, it's the not side taking that is most offensive to some. But although I just have to say it's more of a thing with one side than the other.
At this point, I got to call the game. Sometimes the game, one side is winning or one side is playing well and the other one isn't. Right now, the left isn't playing well. And I made an almost near fool out of myself at the Luigi moment, because I said, this is a model, or they call it a permission structure now in the jargon of political consulting, for direct violent action. And it's happening because they just lost a damn election. Okay. It's happening because when they examined their voting rolls, they didn't get the youth vote that they expected. They're losing the traditional constituencies, various, ethnic groups and class-based categories. And now they're going to radicalism, and they're going to heat over light. And intensity over breadth. That was very and starkly obvious, and this has continued, and it's going to continue more. And I guess I'm here to tell you, as our audience something. There are going to be enforcement actions. These people are not just emoting at the top of the federal government right now. We are now looking at a season of, just as there is a migrant roundup, just as there is a National Guard element in Washington, D.C., there is going to be, I wouldn't call it a crackdown, but a massive investigation of these groups. They've all said it. I'm not telling you anything new. But it is going to rise to a level that people aren't used to yet. And it will bring its own fractures. It will cause its own polarization. It will, in some fashion, raise the heat, especially on some who perceive themselves to be its targets, and maybe unjustly. And that's what we're looking forward to. That the school year started, and that's going to be the class. And the class is going to be in negotiating a new kind of intensity in our politics, not just our politics, but in our law enforcement.
And culturally too, right? So
sure, that will come along with it. Yeah.
So we had another major incident. Karen Attiah, am I pronouncing that right? She's a writer for the Washington Post. Was fired. Can we see her? She's already on Substack, like everybody who gets fired.
Dude, the best way to get your Substack, sort of kickstarted is to get yourself fired.
Yeah, I didn't catch the photo before. Is that she's Lady Liberty here on the cover? Interesting. This is somebody. Okay, well. Let's just go through her tweets. She tweeted, "I wish I had hope for gun control that I could believe political violence has no place in this country." Again, I wish I had hope that I could believe, quote, political violence has no place in this country. But we live in a country that accepts white children being massacred by gun violence. Not just accepts, but worships violence. Like, come on. Then the next one, political violence.
Worships it.
Worships
I don't see a lot of worship of it right now. I see a lot of abhorrence of it. Listen, lady, if there was ever a moment where you might convince conservatives, except that they're scared and they want their concealed carry permit, and a lot of people have talked about that and self-defense. I mean, the best job to be in right now is personal security, let me tell you. I mean, but what?
Political violence has no place in this country, but we will also do nothing to curb the availability of the guns used to carry out said violence. The denial and empty rhetoric is learned helplessness, because the truth is America is sick and there is no cure in sight. Because America, especially white America, is not going to do what it needs to get rid of the guns in their country. It will be thoughts and prayers. Violence has no place, out of a performance of goodness, not out of the resolve to convince their communities to disarm. So,
what?
Like,
So exactly. This is the wonderful trick that sophists, the Greek word for people who use rhetoric to basically deceive or distort or mislead,
foolishness,
use. They divide as they call for unity. They foment violence as they deplore it. They despair of racism as they practice it. Listen, what was she fired for? These tweets?
These tweets, yeah, I believe so. This is my most widely shared thread was not even about Charlie Kirk, but about the political assassination of Minnesota lawmaker Melissa Hortman, her husband, and her dog. I pointed to the familiar pattern of America shrugging off gun deaths. And then she writes, "For everyone saying political violence has no place in this country, remember 2 Democratic legislators were shot in Minnesota just this year, and America shrugged and moved on.
Well, why don't you go investigate that now that you're a Substack reporter? I'm not kidding. I invite you to wade into that investigation and try to throw some light on it, because it's a murky one. I welcome your reporting. Your knee-jerk bullshit that serves your pre-existing agenda, I don't welcome. I don't even know exactly what your point is. Is your point that because gun violence is inevitable, you're going to go grab one? Is that it? Is your point that the politics of discussion, debate, legislation, and so on is so old hat? It's time for some fisticuffs? Is that your point? I have no idea.
She writes, my only direct reference to Kirk was one post, his own words on record. Now,
she requoted the misquote.
And notice, I'm sorry, there's no link to the post there. I don't know. Anyway, she quotes it. Black women do not have the brain processing power to be taken seriously. You have to go steal a white person's slot. Charlie Kirk. So, and then she says, and yet the post accused my measured blue sky posts of being, quote, unacceptable, gross misconduct, and of endangering the safety of colleagues. Charges without evidence, which I reject completely as false.
What was her job at the Post?
She was a columnist.
An opinion columnist?
Yeah, and this is the thing, like, part of her shtick years ago was, I remember a column that she wrote about the role of the media and how it had to reckon with the fact that it was reckon with its role. This was like post J6. That the media's role in allowing Trump to happen, it was because it was, what was the phrase? It had something to do with the rusty something or other. Wait. The rusty armor of both sidesism. So one of the things she was upset about was the New York Times devoting a podcast episode to the feelings of Trump supporters. Another one was Politico coming under fire for allowing right-wing personality Ben Shapiro to guest write its popular Playbook newsletter, despite his history of racist and Islamophobic statements such as this one: Israelis like to build, Arabs like to bomb crap and live in open sewage. And she said Politico's editors defended platforming Shapiro by putting on the rusty armor of both sidesism, noting they had published MSNBC's Chris Hayes as a voice from the left. So this was all part of this thing. This was during the same time when Joan Donovan was saying that deplatforming works. This is when Trump was taken off Twitter. So now we're going to get a similar argument in another direction, but it's just worth noting that some of these folks who are upset about the coming crackdown were in favor of it, all these years.
They were in favor of people getting thrown out of their jobs and thrown out of restaurants and not having the ability even to frickin' travel unless they took their shot, put their mask on, and so on. And you know what? Here's what happened in America in the last 7 months. It's really simple. A president was almost assassinated in a way that was completed this time. Okay. So the imagery and the reality, because I want to stop talking about imagery for a second. The reality of this guy being executed on TV, on TikTok, in front of a crowd, on a college campus, which is supposed to be a peaceful and sanctuary for discussion and talk, was the fulfillment of something that could have happened to the Republican candidate for president, Donald Trump, when they only hit his ear. Oh, I know. Maybe it was fake. You know what I'm hearing already from really bright people? I just heard that the Charlie Kirk assassination was fake. Okay. Number two. So there were 2 assassination attempts that we know of. There was a trans shooting 2 weeks ago. That's what it was. that's how it was perceived, of children in a Catholic church. Okay. There have been nonstop comparisons to Hitler, nonstop dehumanization. They're a virus. This is fascism. This is whatever. The people who have been subject to this are fed up because they thought voting was going to do something. They thought that winning an election in which they showed up people who didn't even vote a lot of the time, the low propensity voters of Pennsylvania, they hoped that the system was going to be an assertion of their frustrated will, the will that they had frustrated during COVID, the will that they felt had been frustrated culturally, whether they're a Christian, a conservative, a middle of the roader, a white person, whoever, any of the people who have been the great stereotypical targets of this rhetoric. They should, just as they should have been in the first Trump election, been allowed to peacefully and democratically work their will through the process, and journalists could have played their usual and traditional and ethical role in reporting the results. Instead, we got this, starting with Luigi, sudden descent into actual murder.
Winking at political, yeah.
Because that was because remember, now we've got the demonization of the victim. But with that, we had the celebration of the assassin. And this is not normal. Walter Kern's here to tell you, I've been around. And if she wants to enter into that atmosphere with her complaints, grievances, oh, it's this group, it's that group, whatever, and it's no more Mr. Nice Guy, it's time to take the gloves off. Well, she can't read the room, and she doesn't belong writing columns, because I would have kept my damn head down if I want to keep my job at Washington Post. None of that was necessary. Things have changed. If you weren't able to have an appropriate human response within 2 days of something, well, I can't help you. Walter is a free speech advocate. Walter loves the underdog. Walter loves the unfairly accused. Whatever.
Well, it's the underlying message of a lot of this stuff is that the people we're criticizing are not really human beings. They're not human beings making argument. They're just bad. They're bad.
Because she just argues that it's both sidism to even let them write in your paper.
Right.
Both sidism for her means paying any attention to these subhuman fascist white people, frankly, to put together her little adjectives and her strings of, imprecation. And there is no right for them to be able to be heard, and no reason to let them be if you have the power to silence them. And now she's all pissed off.
Well,
because she got hoisted by her own petard.
Yeah. And look, I understand being pissed off about losing your job. But
I've lost 10 of them, man.
Yeah.
More than that. Move on. It's the journalism game.
Also, okay, let's say that you listen to Charlie Kirk's speech, about Ketanji Brown Jackson and Joanne Reed, and you're offended, right? And you, what you do is you meet that on the level of argument. You say he's arguing that these people are unqualified, that they wouldn't have made it without without help from affirmative action, and here's why that's offensive, and here's why that's wrong, and here's why even he should welcome affirmative action, right? Like that's where your head should be at in this moment. Or if you're going to argue against him, that's how you do it. You can say, I have grave disagreements with Charlie Kirk about a number of different things, but we don't celebrate violence in this country. Political violence, but to go to this place where it's, shutting them down didn't work. Calling for gun control didn't work. So I'm not in favor of political violence, but
but it's all we got.
But it's all we got. Like, are you kidding me? And you were talking about the frustration of the right wingers who thought winning the election was going to be enough. It wasn't just winning the election that they thought was going to be enough. It was the cascade of firings and resignations and that came from the organic loss of money and audience from the very people who were most strident and intolerant, right, about these things. I mean, Howard Stern, Colbert, all the biggest douchebags from the Washington Post, right? They all lost their jobs. There have been firings almost across the industry.
Doesn't she know she's working at a failing, hemorrhaging, shrinking paper that is looking for any excuse to lay people off?
Anybody
and save money,
They had to give a speech to the whole staff. Like, I think, was it last year, where they're like, we can't keep going, having 50% losses every month or whatever it was. It was some incredible statistic about how much money they were losing, and the staff was so mad they leaked to Politico about being lectured to about how much money they were losing.
It's very hard. I'm going to just be a little bit colorful. It's very hard for Marxists to be fired because they don't understand why an enterprise that espouses left-wing views can't make money from its own virtue. It's like, you got to understand, lady, your principles are such that you're going to be a little surprised that you work for a place that still has to sell ads and get subscribers.
Yeah. And we've already talked about this, but this is a thing that's epidemic. Like, you and I grew up in the era. We talked about this too, where, hey, if you have a bad game, you might get cut. That's we were raised with that. It may not have been a healthy way to look at employment, but I certainly thought that any article I wrote might be my last one. And I remember being utterly shocked by the concept of income that wasn't article dependent. Like,
right.
When I first got a
those contracts, those contracts that just paid you every month, whether you had a piece or not,
Yeah, I mean, those weren't even jobs. That was just, we promised to give you some money every month. We reserve the right to terminate it after a certain period of time, but
I almost wanted to quit those jobs because I felt so guilty when I didn't meet the word counts. They just gnawed at me. I'm like, dude, I'm on welfare with this company, and they're gonna come get me when they figure out I ain't worth it, or that I didn't meet the quota this month. That was how it worked for a long time. There were salad days, but I also want to add this. She is defending and seems most exercised by what she perceives as prejudice against Black women, and she is. That requires I think, extra special care about your presentation, so that you don't affirm the prejudices that you are trying to deplore, and acting like a spoiled brat about your job, like and being completely phased and baffled by the fact that in this system people aren't given sinecures, especially in a shrinking media environment, is not
rapidly shrinking.
Is not to be exemplary. If I was some kind of weird white person, separatist, Christian nationalist, or whatever, I was a Christian nationalist, and I was saying I was getting screwed for it, I'd at least want to show some knowledge of the Bible so that I at least look like a good one, and not, and that stuff coming from her did not serve her points, her underlying points. And welcome to Substack. Welcome to the Wild West. You know, what have you done for me lately? There's not going to be any excuse there if you don't get the subscribers.
Right. Well, yeah, you'll find that out pretty quickly. And then, you know, and the free market is good for some folks. And, you know, as Steve Martin would say, some people have a way with words and others just not have way, right? And that you find that out pretty quick on Substack. But so yes, there is a frustration now we get to the blowback, right? To the clapback.
In 3 days, it's Monday.
No, I know, but there is a thing, as you say, there is a thing that is coming, and it's scary, right? And it's what I've been worrying about for years, because part of what's going on is that
one reason we have this show is so that this wouldn't happen.
It's true. It's true. We've been talking about this for years, and we've been worrying about certain eventualities. One of which is the widespread propagandizing of the idea that speech leads to violence, that the lines between speech and violence are blurry, and that if you cut out a certain kind of speech, you can foreclose upon certain kinds of violence. You mentioned that New York Times.
You know what I want to say? You want the liberals and progressives and even centrists who didn't properly understand this point. Welcome to a hell of your own making, you dumbasses.
Right.
You suppressed others. You frustrated them. You made them feel cast out. You gave them fewer and fewer avenues for the expression of their point of view. You made them afraid at work, frankly. You made them afraid online. You wrote things about how they should not be invited to their family gatherings. And now they have a righteous banner. They have a real event that took place, an actual fear of persecution, not just from the algorithms, but out in the street. You reap what you sow, you dumbasses.
So you mentioned that Times editorial. I wrote about this and I forgot it. So they apologized for mischaracterizing him, quoting some statement online that was anti-Semitic, and they wrote a correction was made on September 11th. An earlier version of this article described incorrectly an anti-Semitic statement that Charlie Kirk had made. They didn't even correct it. They still said it on an episode of his podcast. He was quoting a statement from a post on social media and then went on to critique it. It was not his own statement. So they still fucked up.
Dude, they put prejudicial information that was meant to portray him as an anti-Semite in his obituary.
In his obituary.
And they got it wrong.
So
welcome to your fucking nightmare is what I say to you.
And they said after they got it wrong, the line that was amazing was that ideology motivated the gunman who killed 11 worshippers at a Pittsburgh synagogue in 2018.
What in the hell?
Yeah,
Matt, I got to say, I take a slight amount of pleasure, of ghoulish pleasure myself in seeing those practices. Not that the Times paid any price for that obituary with its readership. It slipped in its little correction. Oh,
yeah, the editor's note. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Matt, we read from literature on this show. We talk about literature. We restate episodes inside books and short stories. Imagine if one of those restatements or quotations was used in our damn obituary against us. And then they find out, well, Walter didn't actually say that. The writer of this book that he was reading from said it.
Yeah.
My spirit from heaven would wish hell upon those people.
Yeah, I mean, just think, it's a good thing we haven't done Lolita on this show, right?
Exactly.
You know, I can only imagine the things that would be reprinted. But but the logic of you say X that leads to this, to violence, that was hammered so thoroughly into the population. Everybody started to believe it. And it became the only question that arose at the end was, well, how far do we want to go in addressing it? Do we want to go all the way to censorship, or do we want to do something a little bit, a little bit less than censorship? There was almost no argument anymore that more speech leads to a better outcome. And we were trying to praise
Except for Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, exactly. We were trying to praise him for doing that one thing, right?
It's a strange thing that the person who got killed and is being portrayed as the inflammatory Nazi worthy of the death penalty, but by those who don't like him, was actually a pretty assiduous conversationalist whose entire act was prove me wrong, don't yell at me. In other words, we're gonna have a debate. He was a debater. He was a Christian evangelist with a debater out front. He was also, and I think this is really forgotten in the whole mix, he was a political organizer, an extremely effective one. And as I've said on Twitter, if you saw that in another country, the most effective youth organizer for a political party, say for the Reform Party, let's say in England, for Nigel Farage's party. If you saw that after Farage had been elected, in part due to that person's efforts, that organizer was assassinated, you wouldn't be down in the weeds about all the past statements and so on. You'd go, wow, there's a political war going on in America or in England. One of their most effective operatives just got assassinated. It would be pretty simple. And sometimes I think we make it overly complicated because as we speak, Kirk was, when he's not giving speeches, organizing get out the vote campaigns in California in particular, that could influence the political complexion of that state. They just lost their best organizer. They just lost their most effective organizer. It's always been said that Republicans don't have a ground game. Well, they got the ground game, and he was the head of it, and he's gone. And to be in complete candor, I think sometimes the fog of culture war issues and media issues and the taking of the national temperature might possibly obscure the fact that a leading political organizer, operative, very successful, who is responsible to some extent for the current president being president, just got taken out. And if that happened in Bulgaria, if it happened in Russia, listen, dude, if it happened in Russia, we'd go, Putin did it. If he was the enemy of Putin. We have this really hardcore, cynical belief about the kind of assassinations that take place in a place like Russia. When we see one party's leading guy get
when Boris Nemtsov gets blown up, we don't have any illusion about what
we don't have to go to Russia and find out about all the subcultures of online and media influence and so on. We go, wow, those people fucking took the gloves off, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a segue into the blowback thing, just quickly, on our last show, as we were recording, there was a piece of news that was just coming out that the Wall Street Journal put out. Mm-hmm. Speaking about corrections, by the way, this wasn't really a correction. Somebody put out there was a source that, and I don't have all the particulars in front of me, but the journal reprinted essentially a line that was on a piece of paper of an ATF report that said that some of the ammo had, I believe the line was transgender ideology. Mm-hmm. And the reason that reporters will fall for something like that, or will put that in print, they might feel more confident about that than they will just about something they were told by an anonymous source. If you can show them that it's on a piece of paper, then the fear level goes down with the journalist. The problem with these reports, they're like FBI 302s. They don't have to be direct quotes. They can be characterizations of things. And so later in the evening, when some of the things that were actually written on the ammunition got out, they were lacking transgender references.
I'm still unclear as to whether the shells or the casings.
So was I. Yes.
Had engravings on them, or whether these were notes attached to the gun.
I'm still unclear about it. Right.
You know what? And there's another measure of how wacky stuff is. We should be concentrating on the details of this investigation. We should be holding the law enforcement and intelligence and investigative officials to a high standard to make sure they're getting this right, since it has so many implications. People don't really want to get it right. Oh, it was on the gun. It was trans. It was not. It was anti-trans. We're just gonna. We don't need those details, because they might restrict our ability to politicize this in the way we need to.
Right.
Who needs a freaking investigation? Who cares if it's on the thing? There's an account. It's pretty on the wild side, and for most people, called I Am John Cullen, a guy who investigates in detail using sonic recordings of bullets. He did the Las Vegas shooting. He did the Butler shooting. He has theories about COVID, which are unconventional. But he's a guy who, whether you agree with his conclusions, goes deep into very specific evidence using scientific methods. Okay, all we have, as far as I can tell in this, is a gun that was found in the woods that we assume is a murder weapon, and we don't yet have a bullet in the victim. They never recovered that. It's unclear how the gun was transported. It's clear there are a lot of things that bear scrutiny and would require that our investigators be very candid and precise about how the investigation is going, because every bit of imprecision and every bit of contradiction becomes the groundwork for, it didn't really even happen.
Well, right. So this is the thing. Like, that line is really on the report, but you have to tell the audience, that we don't know exactly what that means, because they're characterizing something, right? So we don't have.
Somebody said there's shooter's DNA on the gun. I don't doubt that. But the gun is not yet linked to the death, because you can't make a ballistic link between a bullet that was found in the guy and that gun barrel.
So
as of this moment,
everybody's raging about that. The journal updated that with this thing like, but officials say, here's the editor's note. An earlier version of this article detailed how an internal law enforcement bulletin said that ammunition recovered from the Charlie Kirk shooting was engraved with expressions of, quote, transgender and anti-fascist ideology. Justice Department officials later urged caution about the bulletin by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, saying it may not accurately reflect the messages on the ammunition. And the article was updated Thursday to reflect that fact. The editor's note was appended on Friday, September 12th, after Utah Governor Spencer Cox said the engravings included one that said, "Hey, fascist," along with other messages and symbols. He gave no indication that the ammunition included any transgender references. Okay. What that update says for people who don't speak press-ese is we don't know exactly everything that's in. We don't know all the things that the Justice Department is looking at. the Justice Department just finked on somebody for maybe over speaking or mischaracterizing something in a report, but that still doesn't mean we know exactly what's in there, right? We don't have the totality of everything. It's not an error. It's a note of caution. Okay.
May I remind America that this shooter, the alleged shooter, is not dead. Therefore, he will have a trial. Therefore, the evidence in that trial and the pre-trial statements by law enforcement and the general sense of his guilt and so on are very sensitive issues. And that, the press and other places need to start with as fine a regard for the facts and as much prudence about stating things that they don't know and maybe not stating them until they do as possible, because it's very important that someone who is accused of a crime of this magnitude have a fair trial, not just fair, but one in which, should he be convicted, all of these inflamed sides must agree was a just conviction. So like, this isn't, and I'm sorry to our commenters. A lot of you don't know a damn thing about anything, because if I know, they found the bullet casing. Well, if you don't find the bullet, then you don't know that it came from the casing, dude. Everybody in America, before we get gun control, let's get some gun education, because they go off on these stories with this half-assed notion of how firearms work and what a casing is and what a bullet is and this, that, and so on. And they don't, they don't know a thing, and they're actually having real deep emotional reactions down to thinking the thing is fake or that it's all been decided. And it hasn't. There's an investigation going on. Just because you watch one Law and Order episode doesn't mean you're, grounded in this area. I hate to tell you that even though you may deplore guns in general, you should still learn about them, but I will.
Well, everyone's going to have to know about guns soon. I'm happy the last non-gun owning person in America soon. Okay, so let's listen to SOTs 1 and 2 from the governor, Spencer Cox, who came out on Meet the Press over the weekend and said some stuff. This is the Republican governor of Utah.
We can confirm that again, according to family and people that we're interviewing, he does come from a conservative family, but his ideology was very different than his family, and so that's part of it. We do know that the roommate that we had originally talked about, we can confirm that roommate is a boyfriend who is transitioning from male to female. So we know that piece. I will say that person has been very cooperative with authorities, and we have additional evidence, forensic evidence that has been processed. We'll be sharing that when charges are filed on Tuesday. So everything that we know confirms that this is the person. What we have learned specifically is that this person did not have any knowledge, was shocked when they found out about it. When he found out about it, the suspect has not been cooperating so far, and so we're getting all of this information from family members, again people around the suspect, and then the forensic information that we have, which is confirming everything and more than what we were able to share in that initial press conference.
And let's go to the second one, which is I believe about social media.
And I can't emphasize enough the damage that social media and the internet is doing to all of us. Those dopamine hits, these companies, trillion-dollar market caps, the most powerful companies in the history of the world, have figured out how to hack our brains, get us addicted to outrage, which is the same type of dopamine, the same chemical that you get from taking fentanyl, get us addicted to outrage and get us to hate each other. I'm seeing it in real time since the tragic death of Charlie Kirk. I'm seeing it in every corner of our society. The conflict entrepreneurs are taking advantage of us, and we are losing our agency, and we have to take that back. We have to turn it off. We have to get back to community, caring about our neighbors.
Well, Governor, you referred to social media as a cancer on Friday. That's an incredibly strong word. Do you believe that social media played a direct role in this assassination?
So here we go.
I believe that social media has played a direct role in every single assassination and assassination attempt that we have seen over the last 5-6 years. There is no question in my mind that cancer probably isn't a strong enough word. What we have done, especially to our kids, it took us a decade to realize how evil these algorithms are, and we're doing everything in Utah, first state in the nation a couple years ago to pass comprehensive reform. Sadly, these most powerful companies on earth are suing us to prevent us from implementing these things.
Okay, so there's that, right? Now we're going to get, everybody complained about the horseshoe theory when it was populist left and populist right movements getting together over things like being opposed to certain wars. But now you're going to get Republicans and Democrats agreeing about the toxicity of social media, and there's going to be a crackdown, right? Like this is what's coming. There was a story. Let's look at the Independence. Is it the Independent? Yeah, here we go. Trump shares call for media accountability with Charlie Kirk Act after shooting. And this is being pitched as a reinstatement of the Smith-Mundt Act. There was I have some friends who work in federal media, and
what's federal media? What does that mean?
Let's just say under the realm of the Broadcasting Board of Governors, right? So okay. So the original Smith-Mundt Act passed in, what was it, 47 or 48? That was the idea there was to prevent U.S. propaganda from reaching Americans. So things like the United States Information Service, the State Department, they can propagandize foreigners to their heart, to kingdom come. They're not allowed to do it here in America. There have been numerous congressional battles over the years about this. There were fears during the McCarthy period that a communist takeover of the State Department would result in communist propaganda domestically. So they strengthened these laws. Then they were loosened again, then strengthened. In the Obama years,
depending on who wanted to get their propaganda out and had the ability to.
Exactly. In 2013, there was a law that the Obama administration got passed. It was a tweak of Smith-Mundt.
It was a modernization.
A modernization
title, yes.
Yes, and people misunderstand, I think, what this was. I didn't like this law. It does give a loophole for the government to it essentially allows for VOA and services like that to reach foreign language diasporas in the United States. So let's say you have a VOA broadcast that targets the Russian-speaking population or whatever. You can turn around and broadcast that stuff here.
That's called a backdoor, Matt. I'm sorry. That doesn't. It doesn't seem all that minor to me. You could drive a truck through that one.
You could, but it's still mostly foreign language media. It wasn't.
Why did it need to be modernized?
Look, they were definitely trying to expand their purview, but this wasn't about. I would say the GEC was a much, much more aggressive, bigger power grab than this. Right. This was something that was designed to just throw a little bit more money at certain parts of this fairly small media universe and add a division or two to it. It wasn't completely overturning the prohibition on domestic propaganda.
Well, then revising it shouldn't cause much of it.
No. So now, but what they do want to do now is pretty It
They want to
seems
go
pretty
back and have it. They want to go back and not only unmodernize it, they want to do
beef it up.
something even
Yeah.
stronger.
So let's look at SOT 4, and this is a TikTok video. This is from somebody named Ellie Mae.
Yeah, I saw her. Yeah.
Alrighty, this message is for President Trump and his administration. If you stay to watch the video, please tag him down below, share, and repost so we can try to get this to him as quickly as possible and hope that he can do something with this. President Trump, as a supporter who voted for you 3 times, I am hoping and praying that you will revisit what Barack Obama and Joe Biden got rid of back in 2013, which is the Smith-Mundt Act, which held news corporations accountable for lying to the American people and spreading propaganda instead of truth. I think instead of bringing it back as a Smith-Mundt Act, you name it the Charlie Kirk Act, you make it a law, and you make it damn near impossible for these people to continue to lie to the American public, which has brought chaos, hatred, division, and anarchy all across this country. Fines out the ass, which will damn near bankrupt their company should they lie to the American people ever again. They can have their opinions, that's fine. They need to state that it is their opinion and that it is not a fact. Because of their constant lies, a man lost his life over it. Because of the constant hateful rhetoric of calling him a fascist and a Nazi and a white supremacist and a bigot, the same thing that they called you, this man is dead. I think this would be a great legacy for him to have a law named after him, to force journalists to finally start telling the truth and having the integrity that they have lacked for over a decade.
Okay.
I hope that this gets to you. I hope.
Yeah, go ahead, Walter. We can take her down.
May I just intrude here, because I think there's an assumption that's unexamined in all of this. What if some industry, we've seen this happen with witnesses in a Boeing case. We've seen a mystery around someone at OpenAI who died. What if someone who felt particularly threatened by Charlie Kirk in some particular way had him killed? That means that all this bullshit isn't relevant. Okay. So let's at least hold in reserve the possibility that this was a good old fashioned political, industrial, or, interest-based assassination before we do Patriot Act 2, before we do whatever they think would have rolled back time. These moments after something like this happens, if there was one thing I wish I could go back as a journalist and do, is go back right after 9/11 and be absolutely prepared for that Patriot Act.
I wasn't either. That's a big regret of mine too.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And I'm really wary of legislation passed in the heat of the moment, especially if it has to do with our constitutional order. That,
right.
When it's not just, let's, I don't know, outlaw this little thing or that little thing, or make people drive slower after having so many car crashes at 80, let's bring it down to 70. No, these kind of things are usually hasty. The opportunists get in there and they do things that nobody who is just, idealistic and upset understands. And then you have an unwinding that is impossible 5 years later.
So let's look at SOT 3. This is Trump talking, I believe after the assassination. Yeah, Friday.
I want to play you a little bit of what.
This is from Meet the Press. Go ahead. Yeah.
Get your reaction. Take a look.
The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. They don't want to see crime.
Worried about the border.
They're saying, we don't want these people coming in. We don't want you burning our shopping centers. We don't want you shooting our people in the middle of the street. The radicals on the left are the problem. And they're vicious and they're horrible and they're politically savvy.
What is your reaction to that message from President Trump, Governor?
Well, look, I've talked to President Trump. President Trump is angry, and he has every right to be angry. A lot of Americans are very angry right now, and there clearly was a leftist ideology with this assassin. And
okay. I'm seeing something that's quite obvious, and I don't like it right now.
What's that?
Okay, I live out in Montana. I am a baptized Mormon. So is Cox. So was the killer, allegedly. It's a state as close to a theocracy as America gets, but it isn't one. It's just he's a liberal Republican, much more liberal than Utah usually elects to the governorship. You know, Romney-ish, let's say. They're trying to pit these guys against each other in a very subtle way. I'm seeing a little campaigning going on with this Cox guy, and I don't like it. He's talking a little too much. I would like to see a law enforcement source rather than the governor of Utah, who with political ambitions all over the place. I'm not criticizing him, but I'm getting a hit that there's some campaigning going on around this, and I don't like it. Trump, we understand. Cox is now having his turn on the national stage. He's getting a lot of airtime, and he's a pretty clever guy. If you go to Utah, you know he's a much smoother and deft and supple politician than people who are just seeing him for the first time might realize. And I'm just seeing a little bit of campaigning over a death that is supposedly so shocking that they all are, you know, upset. And there I saw NBC pit them.
Well, so NBC, the thing that stood out to me is NBC is stoked about the sudden like idea that social media is a cancer and we have to crack down on it. I mean, they've been pushing that for years. They have a whole, they had a whole department devoted to, you know, sort of online contaminant speech, and those people put out tons of material that resulted in either, you know, accounts being banned or removed from or de-amplified from the internet. They've been on a high horse about this, so that's what worries me, is that you marry that to the conservative outrage over this incident, and we're going to get some consensus about government control over speech. Now, the Spin Cycle did a thing over the weekend that was based, I think, maybe inaccurately on an August Truth Social post from Trump. Can we see that post first? Let's get, yeah. Despite very high popularity and according to many, among the greatest 8 months in presidential history, ABC and NBC fake news, two of the worst and most biased networks in history, gave me 97% bad stories. If that is the case, they are simply an arm of the Democratic Party, and should, according to many, have their licenses revoked by the FCC. I would be totally in favor of that because they are so biased and untruthful, an actual threat to our democracy. MAGA. So again, the marriage here. Okay, well, let's listen to this.
President Trump, who's won a pair of lawsuits against the three broadcast networks, is now escalating his battle against two of them. ABC and NBC fake news, two of the worst and most biased networks in history, give me 97% bad stories. If that's the case, they are simply an arm of the Democrat Party and should, according to many, have their licenses revoked by the FCC. I would be totally in favor of that because they are so biased and untruthful, an actual threat to our democracy.
So, all right. What do they mean? I don't think Trump understands their licenses. They are networks. That means groups of affiliates. It's the affiliates who have the broadcast licenses, as I understand it. Some of the affiliates are owned by the network, but many aren't. Is there a national license to a network?
Yeah, I believe that the national broadcast. Maybe not, actually. You're right.
I think I think he's generalizing in a way. Also, let's look back at Cox for a second, because he's the new person. I know all about Trump. He's calling for it. He is, as I say, there's a lot of Utahns, red-blooded Utahns, who don't like this governor Cox. They see him as Romney-ish. They see him as weak. They see him as woke. Okay? He is a liberal Republican. That's what Cox is, okay? And he is calling for it. So he's kind of coming as the fusion, the triangulation, the Bill Clinton on the right guy, and he's pushing it at least as hard as Trump. He just basically called social media evil. He used almost theological rhetoric. He didn't just say, as Trump did, hey, they're against me politically. He actually made a kind of pseudo churchy moral argument against it. And he's coming from, as I say, the center. That is not just a horseshoe with the edges meeting. That means it's becoming a centrist position.
Well, I mean, it was already a Democratic centrist position. Now we're bleeding into the Republican side. And as you say, I worry about Patriot Act 2 or Patriot Act 8, actually, because we've had so many gazillion enhancements of things since the Patriot Act. But
well, there's FISAs all over the place probably going on right now, because they're anything that happened with the internet has a foreign element. Okay. Because anybody who,
as they like to say, yeah.
Yeah. If you were on Discord for an hour, you were dealing with foreigners at some point, even if you didn't think they were. I have another thing to say about Cox, because that stuck it for me. If after Martin Luther King was assassinated, the Tennessee governor became the face of explaining it to America, that would give me pause. Governor Cox just had an assassination take place in his state, right down the street from his state capital, in one of the universities that the state runs. Let's remember that University of Utah Valley University, that's a state operation. I don't know that he should be out there saying anything, but he apologizes for having an insecure state, an insecure university, and maybe it should
and he's blaming it on social media.
Yeah, exactly. He the killer came from that state. If there were a conspiracy, it's located there. The police didn't have a great response, frankly. I have a reporter friend who you also know, kind of scrappy guy, ex-military, who got into a press conference there with the FBI right afterwards, sneaked in, and he saw the crime scene. It was not secured. It was not secured. There are people all over the place. I don't know that Cox should quite be the one at this point to sit up there on the judgment throne about social media, etc., when in his own state, at the hands of one of his own citizens, on the grounds of one of his own universities, somebody was just shot and killed.
Yeah. Especially as we buried the lead there a little bit, but there's one of the things that's coming out now is that there was a message about having an opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it. That was shared with at least one other person before this happened. So although that's just something that's been said by FBI officials, we have to introduce the caveat that we don't know exactly what that message, where they found it, or what the forensic traces they're saying of that are. But it's at least true that they're pursuing an investigation that involves more than one person at this point. So we know that. People
Matt, they want us to get to the book, and you agree,
I know,
and you agree because you put the comment up.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm actually wondering if we should just keep talking about this, but yeah, no,
we could promise them the end of the Hound of the Baskervilles on Friday rather than try to do the head twisting turn.
Yeah, we could do that. I mean, look, the one thing I'll say about this is, the two things that really stood out to me that shocked me when because I took a couple of days off from looking at it. It was too horrible for me. Going back and looking at it, the almost sociopathic tenor of the gloating was just absolutely shocking. And then I think that is spurring this other response, which is, you know what, fuck it. Like, it's time to clamp down on the press. And the problem that people are going to have in arguing against this is that is that there is a problem with media.
There
are.
We talk about it every week.
We talk about it all the time. A lot of these networks are de facto political organizations. It's true on both sides of the aisle, but
Staffed
again,
by ex-press secretaries and intelligence
like
officials.
that whole thing has become much more aggressive lately in the last 5 or 6 years, and so it's going to be hard to argue no, they're not political organizations that need some kind of like
people keep wanting Trump to rise above,
right? And
he's not gonna. Okay. And I don't know that I would if I had 90%, if that's actually, legitimate statistic and so on. If I had 97% negative stories on me and I was president of the United States, I might say something.
Yeah, you might, but you shouldn't follow through though, because the problem is everybody loses if we end up with a state-controlled media system. So
well, we already have a semi one.
But you got to go kicking and screaming on this. I think is my point. I know that's not going to be popular right now.
I kind of agree. I agree in terms of my feelings and my intellect, but there is an opposing point of view, which is interesting, more interesting than I used to give it credit for being, which is that you get punched, you punch back. That the only way to stop fights is mutually assured destruction. And that people think they can push you around. It's prison rules, and you got to come back at it. And I think some people, especially on the right, who feel like they've been muted or shut up or mischaracterized, would like to see that style of justice rather than always having to be the principled side. Now, I'm not endorsing that because I don't quite agree with it, but I can see in history why sometimes fighting back, because this is a fight and it's going to keep being one, and we just got pilloried for not being sufficiently pissed off that Barry Weiss is taking off, is going to be an executive at CBS News. Okay. Notice that CBS News wasn't one of the two that was named.
Yeah, I know that was pretty conspicuous. But look, my worry about this is that you're going to get the people who are going to be in favor of this institutionally on the inside are the same ones who directed the COVID thing. They're going to be the ones who are just in favor of let's just have some more dials that we can use to get the population so we can manufacture consent digitally.
You know what I think would be more effective, President Trump and all others? Pull the pharma ads. Because frankly, I think that in all this discussion of censorship and so on, we don't look at the practical fact, which is that 70% of these news channels ad revenue comes from one industry.
Well, that's true. If you want to just kill those companies, that's the easiest way to do it.
And frankly, if you want, we haven't yet got into Walter's conspiratorial, creative writing, special interpretation and framework for all this. And God help us when we do, because I'll probably screw myself forever. But we just had a huge push against pharma. And we just had a press conference about their advertising a day or two before this happened. They're going to have to reveal all the side effects and so on and so on. And a pharma lawyer or a lawyer involved with pharma told me that would require them to make the commercials twice as long and double the price. Okay. And that it is actually a way of pushing back at them. I think that the convergence of this one advertising complex and the news has been bad for the country and explains the media's slantedness almost as well as the notion that they are political operations. And I won't say why I think that works, but if you want to really do something, let's re-examine that. because I think that's fundamental, and I think this is decorative, frankly.
It's true. It also explains the sort of monocultural tone of the media a little bit better. I mean,
yes, because something happened.
So something happened. We were in this universe where, I mean, we're old enough to remember working in newsrooms where nobody gave a shit what the person next to you, what their politics were. Like, it just wasn't a thing. It was a job. Like, we didn't really care. Like, you would get sent out on a story. You would come back. You might not even. You would work next to somebody for years and not know what they really thought about things. And then, boy, did that change quick. And that era is gone. Can you legislate it back? I don't know. I don't think so. And I'd be scared of any attempt to do it. So, but either way, this is a scary ass moment and a disturbing one too, because also, like, I try not to look at those TikTok videos and everything, but if those are real people,
they aren't. They
aren't. Okay, good. Thank God.
Well, they are and they aren't. Okay. I had a 2-hour discussion with an investor in this space who has been in this game and field for a long time. This is how it works. And it's very interesting, and it's not obvious. Especially on TikTok, it's not as true of Twitter. And as I say, TikTok is the dominant form in this story space right now. People are able to make little bits of money by aligning themselves with these shops that push out recommendations for their content. Now, a lot of these people are low-income people and recent immigrants to the United States who don't have a foothold in the economy yet and are making $25, $50 at a time by allowing themselves to basically become outlets or vehicles for what is essentially corporate speech that's coming from a corporate center and may have been paid for by a client or whatever. Okay. And they even set competitions between them. Like, the person who can get the most hits for this or whatever wins the $50. And that's how TikTok actually operates. It's not. And so this fellow's concern is that there are different laws for corporate speech than individual speech. And that what appears to be individual speech on TikTok is actually corporate speech. And those people who appear to be, speaking from the heart are actually, in many cases, economically marginal people, often new to the country, who are looking for rent money. And that's like the real reporting side of what's going on, not the theoretical side. And these shops take clients and who want to propagate a certain point of view, and then it comes down to these people who are getting $25.
Well, yeah, there might be a way to deal with that wouldn't be, a massive outrage to the Constitution. I think
this person thinks that there should be a Department of Justice investigation of how this corporate speech is being laundered as supposedly individual speech.
Right. Yeah. That could be a way to do it. I'm just saying, like, I'm getting chills up my spine because I hear all the same talking points that we heard in the last 8 years. It's just that it's coming from people who are pissed off. I mean, it's almost word for word the kind of stuff that you heard after J6, which will, we have to shut down this station. Fox has to go. Trump's got to be off the media. And remember, they succeeded in getting President of the United States off media at that time. So
I made a request of my Twitter followers that I said, could a few more of you just use your real names? Because I feel like I'm interacting with these cryptic entities. And not only don't I know who you are, you might be somebody who hates me masquerading. Could a few of you use your real names? It's kind of odd things to say. As a result of this request, I got a lot of people, I'd say 30 or 40 at this point, telling me their story of why they are anonymous on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And to a person, they gave me very compelling, interesting, not AI driven stories of persecution at work, risks by their family, from their family, bad incidents of harassment, convincing stuff that looks real to me as a reporter. And I'm going, wow, it's actually true out there. There has been an ideological war on people of diverse points of view. Some of them it's because of what they think about COVID. Some of it's good old, partisan politics. Some of it's other stuff. They might work in the federal government and they're afraid. That's real and that's out there. And it woke me up. I suddenly wasn't quite as glib about the notion that everybody should just use their real name.
Yeah, and that's something that we naturally think because we use our real names, right?
Yeah.
And we have to put up with but you know what? We get, there's a benefit we get that other people don't. And
we were those kind of people in the first place.
Right. Right. So
byline people.
But the thing that's going to be the headline news, I think, for this coming week as this all unfolds is, we didn't listen to the rest of Vance's speech, but it's similar to what Trump said. Vance gave a real broadside against the idea of that the left is just worse in this country, that they're more vicious.
He just watched one of his best friends' head blown off, neck blown out.
Yeah,
I mean, how can I put it? But he said something in that presentation that really rang with me. He said, he's talking, okay, he's on a conservative broadcast. He's in Charlie Kirk's chair. That's what he did. He broadcast from his empty chair. That was his show that Vance was on. And he says to the audience, I can't guarantee you that that some others might suffer Charlie's fate, meaning get killed. He said, I can't guarantee you that I won't suffer his fate. That blew me back in my chair because that reminded me that this guy worked for a president who was almost assassinated and for a friend. And I'll give you some inside information. That Butler rally was supposed to be the announcement of the vice president who was going to be Vance. And for various reasons, there was party skirmishes over that choice, and it was delayed. J.D. Vance was supposed to be on that stage in Butler. I have been told on Tuesday by a friend and a journalist who is close to him, watch it. And when he didn't show up there, I was actually surprised. So there is a sense of chilling immediacy for this administration around this question.
But which is scary in itself, right? I mean, I get it.
Because I want them to keep their heads. I want them to keep their heads, and I know that, and I know that they're capable of it. But at the same time, I understand that, I was almost on stage with a president who got assassinated when he got shot. Oh, and my best friend and I just flew his body home to his wife, and I've been friends with him for a long time. He's actually responsible for me in some ways running it in the first place in Ohio. I don't know, man. That hits closer to home than
I get it, and look, something has to be done about people in this country. We become desensitized. We're meaner. I like us less than I used to,
I like us less and I fear us more.
I fear us more, right? And people have been saying this for years. Remember how even after Columbine, it's like, oh, it's the video games. Like people have, and all of the braying for war after 9/11, people blame that on certain things. But this,
I got caught up in that. That one I got caught up in.
Well, that happens. Look, you can get angry about things, and you can be angry about this. I mean, I totally understand people looking online and being furious this week. I just hope it doesn't go where it feels like it's going. So we'll just have to.
What I expect is that there are going to be enterprises that will be somewhat extraordinary to the audience as they occur, and there's going to be a consonant cry in the press that we're seeing the dawn of fascism and dictatorial power on the part of Trump, and I don't think that will lead to a cooling off. I don't see many parties that want a cooling off, to be honest.
No, I don't either. You know, but I think that there's at least probably going to be some come to Jesus moments about the reality of how radicalized people have become in this country. But I don't know.
We're also, just to mention it, because I'm aware of it, and I like to be absolutely straight with my audience. There is a growing influencer chorus of people who want to blame this on a particular nation state, and
well, that's true too. Yeah,
and it's significant. And I would caution our audience, if they are the kind who want to be thoughtful, to look at all of this with askance at this point, because it's very hard to disentangle what's authentic, what's not, what's the fog of war, what's emotion. It is amazing, and it's a tribute to the guy who died. It's not. This isn't all just automation and systems theory and built up pressure. The guy who died obviously inspired great loyalty, and I think underneath it all, you got a story of a guy who had a lot of friends, who had a lot of followers, and who, because of his religiosity, lifted the situation slightly, for better or for worse, maybe slightly above a secular political situation.
Yeah, but you're also referencing some speculative tweets that incidentally leaked into in lots of different directions last week, and yeah, I guess all we can say is everyone should be careful of things right in this moment. Wait until things come out and have been triple and quadruple confirmed before you derive any meaning from it at all. But yeah, we're just gonna have to see how this unfolds, because usually a news story, there's a burst of energy in the beginning, there's a flurry of errors, right? Like we saw this with the pandemic. People made all kinds of strange mistakes, weird things that happen, and then as people settle in, narratives start to harden a little bit. What's happening now is that this story is enraging everybody constantly, which is causing calls for action that are extraordinary. So I don't know, but we'll just have to watch and see what happens. So anyway, I'm sorry folks, we didn't get to Sherlock Holmes today. We will absolutely get. We
couldn't quite figure out how to make. We're not like trained psychopathic network news anchors who can go from assassination to. But today in sports,
Right, exactly. Yeah. And now here's Alan Partridge, right? No, we couldn't do it. And again, like Sherlock Holmes is just too happy for this subject. Maybe we need to find a way to have a buffer zone between this stuff and the books. But anyway, we're sorry, folks. We'll get to it on the next show. And thanks for hanging out.
And it'll give you more time over the weekend to move to the next book, which we should announce then.
Right, absolutely. All right, everybody. Thank you, Walter. Thank you, mystery producers, and we'll talk to you soon.